This is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I would ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say, we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
You don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
WESN.
Dark times or brighter days, that is the question. The question for future. What will we experience? Well, the irony, of course, is that more often than not, it's more in the middle than to the extremes. But life and society, governing a country, a population trying to coexist just with each other internally, not even necessarily speaking about other external societies, other nations, other jurisdictions. That's so complex that a middle-of-the-road future might be bad enough, at least for some people, that it's something that we shouldn't so easily accept. A couple of things I wanted to point out. I guess to some extent from least severity to most severe, before we go into the daily review today, just a couple of minor stories to comment on. First, there was a situation where armed police apparently borrowed a jet ski to get to a fishing boat that was out to sea. And unfortunately, one of the officers fell in the water, lost his submachine gun and pistol. Of course, now there's a question, first of all, isn't there any sort of harness for the submachine gun and a clip for the holster for the pistol? Don't ask me what the correct terms are. My point is, to some extent, one, that they have the correct equipment to secure their equipment, and two, this perhaps is not a question, but rather a statement, or maybe it is, in the form of a question, is this a sign of a lack of training? Because to some extent, police, you don't expect them to have aquatic assault training on jet skis. And the lack of experience in that kind of scenario could easily lead to an officer not being prepared to secure his firearms, and now they're lost in the sea. And the police are going to have to spend some amount of effort to try to find it. The problem is, how realistic is an expectation to say that they need to, it must be found? Ironically, again, if we're lucky, they won't just wash up on shore randomly somewhere, because then it's Russian roulette, literally. Well, to some extent, figuratively. But then there's a situation that I find to be, to use a word a third time, but deliciously so ironic. Port of Spain City Corporation is apparently footing the bill for the wreckers, but the fees don't go to the Port of Spain City Corporation. Apparently it goes to the TDPS, who says they put it into an account for the Treasury. Now, in a perfect world, that should be easily sorted out. Somehow, apparently it is not. And I can't fault the Port of Spain Corporation saying, why are we footing the bill for wreckers when we're not even breaking even? Finances of the country, that's a subject that touches on every level of government, particularly local government bodies. And I guess we all assumed the wrecking was for the corporation to earn money, but I guess somebody got hit with a Uno reverse card saying, not so fast. Now what will happen moving forward? Because the low-hanging fruit solution would be to just, figure out a way for the Port of Spain Corporation to get some of that money so they're not wrecking at a loss. Although I'm sure there are a lot of us who actually takes, again, this is where the delicious irony comes in, takes some amount of perverted pleasure knowing, oh, you mean you're losing money to wreck my car, just like I lose money to get back? Of course, those who park in areas where they clearly should not park, shame on them. But those who maybe were not behind the line or in the wrong spot, they were in the clear, or heavens forbid, you parked on a property that you own or in front of a gate that you own, and you got wrecked. Not every wrecking is, above board, although I only know of a couple of anecdotes throughout the years, so to say that all wrecking is corrupt. But we have to wait and see how this thing turns out. The solution should be easier than we think, yet it probably will be harder in practice, and that, if the case, is a bad sign. Another quick commentary, I didn't necessarily want to spend too much time on this. A former PNM constituency executive chairman is now a candidate for the constituency that he was the PNM chairman for, except it's for the opposing party, United National Congress, which is an interesting development because it seems as though the political winds, they're blowing all over the place. Just last week, a story I didn't get to, trans activist Joelle D'Souza, a former temporary senator, she resigned from the UNC, citing concerns over the party's leadership, and the opposition leader said, I can't remember the exact term, but this sort of thing was being overblown. This was an attempt to damage the party. This was intentional, which I find interesting. You have people saying the UNC has issues and they're to various degrees either trying to rectify it or saying, I don't want to deal with it. And then you have someone from the PNM saying, I find them an opportunity with the UNC. Of course, the PNM said we don't necessarily want the UNC dissidents. All right, c'est la vie. That's a whole other level compared to this. But again, there's no clear this party has momentum over that party. This party, there's a clear consensus that people think it's going in the right direction. That party, there's a clear consensus that it's not. Or this party, both parties, we have a clear consensus that things are fine and they're going to duke it out in a highly competitive race. That definitely is far from the case. Now the question is, do we have a situation where both parties look less than impressive? That's why the situation seems somewhat random, because when neither option is a clear-cut favorite because they both have their issues, individuals kind of have to make the decision on their own, and thus we don't get a consensus. To some extent, again, this is not a popularity competition, even though it kind of is, but it shouldn't be, right? It should be about meritocracy and who's best for the country, not who we like the most or who we think gonna win, so we'll just follow the bandwagon. But we've reached that point, I guess. Now it's about opportunities, and when decisions are made based on that, dare I say, how many politicians are opportunists rather than people basically answering the call to a vocation of service, not for, ooh, what can I get out of this situation, maximize my profits. Is that the case of what happened with this new UNC candidate? I'm not saying it is. But again, if we just go wider and we say a lot of people looking out for their individual opportunities, then to what extent is that an individual agenda? Because the flip side to that is, you can't fix nothing if you don't win. Now, which party is better than the other? I mean, it is really up to the eye of the beholder. Last thing I wanted to mention quickly. There's an article in The Guardian. I'm not sure if it was yesterday's. I think it might be today's. It's about youth suicides. I didn't necessarily go through the whole article. I'm not here to tell you what the article says, just to highlight this issue. Because, you know, I witnessed somebody get a call that there potentially was a teen suicide attempted just Saturday night. I don't know all the details, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you anyway. The point is not who may have done what, but rather, to what extent do we not fully understand that because our core systems are failing and the foundational systems are not up to scratch, we have so many holes, and a lot of them are subtle. It's not so easy to see until after the fact. And a lot of the times, perhaps there's a lot of patchwork stuff going on in various ways to try to fill these holes, but eventually somebody falls through the cracks. And part of the danger is it won't just be somebody, but it might end up being somebody's. To some extent, the murder rate is like that. We can't actually treat with the situation, in part because we don't even know where to begin, and more often than not, we don't properly assess the situation, identify the problem, and find an actual, practical, workable solution for it. And I do wonder to what degree part of the issues with our societies, we're trying to patch all these leaks, but because we're not using good means to do so, we're not really filling them long term. It's all temporary. So inevitably, as we continue to try to patch more leaks, some of them start to spring back out, and it compounds it on itself, the overall situation, and then the mountain seems to grow bigger. Things seem to get harder. Problems seem to increase in scope, scale, number, severity, and then we're like, oh my gosh, how do we fix everything? So we bury our heads in the sand and try to convince ourselves, oh no, this is normal, right? There's some amount of this, gangsters killing gangsters, etc., etc. You could take your pick across the line of issues. We try to convince ourselves, this is kind of normal-ish, right? It's fine. It's fine. Until it's not. More on that in a bit. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go to Daily Review. Stay tuned.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No.
Let's go to the last part.
Welcome back to Talking About It, and of course now we're in our daily review. This is a story that the narrative is slightly different with regards to the framing, I think, maybe to some extent some of the details on what exactly is going on in Sealots right now. Essentially, the community has reached out to the police saying, help us deal with crime. And, you know, there will be cynics out there. And to some extent, I can't necessarily say I won't be included in this. Well, when communities like this kind of have a us versus the police mentality at times, now we see how it can be counterproductive. This is one of those things where, look, you want the help? Well, if you want the help, you kind of have to accept police doing police things, which could include arresting people, searching houses. Now, of course, this is one of those catch-22 situations, right? Where, to what extent the police, it's a high-risk area, it's a hotspot. Might they be overzealous? Might they be a little too aggressive with their policies, both with how they interact with people, maybe how they interact with subjects, and how they pursue warrants, or in some cases, maybe they might follow the example of not having a warrant at all. And of course, now, whenever you have to engage with the public, you just run the risk of more bad interactions due to numbers, not due to you necessarily being bad, right? This is one of those things where if the sea loss community, I think, they have these concerns, they also need to know that, look, what do I say? One of the things I say, because I say many things at the end of the show, it's nice to be nice. I get it. We've said this before, and maybe I'll reiterate this again with the ASP when he's on the show. But even if the police officer is mistreating you, it does not serve any practical purpose for you to fight back in any sort of aggressive manner. And to some extent, I think what happens is it's a vicious cycle where you feel victimized, so you try to defend yourself, but by defending yourself, because you're not in an equal situation when you interact with the police, you kind of set yourself up to get mistreated worse. But your aggressive behavior does not help yourself when it comes time to seek redress afterwards. Now, like I said, there are different frameworks, and one of the things is some of the people or some of the statements or versions coming out of what's going on in sea lots is concerns that, well, there are the level of violence, the disruption in the community. One quote is that the women feel the need to go to the police station was due to attacks on innocent and elderly. And perhaps we should not make the mistake to look at sea lots and say, well, that's a them, and look what they're doing, and they end up so because of, no. A lot of what's going on in sea lots is a microcosm of what's going on in the country. It's a situation where, because it's not just in South and East Port of Spain where things like this can happen, right? Or hotspots. The relationship with the police, it's not at its best. The police have their part to do. If they fail at it, that's a them problem. Citizens have their part to do. If citizens fail at it, that's the citizens' problem. But then what happens is when you have these issues and it causes separation, you get cracks again, like what I mentioned earlier. And then now, it was fine when we tried to placate ourselves, what did I say, with gangsters killing gangsters, try to normalize the situation. But now, what is the quote? Innocent and elderly. Innocent, I assume, meaning younger children, maybe people not involved in any sort of funny business, and the elderly. So they have concerns with regards to the level of violence. Now, MP Keith Scotland, he did, in fact, one article basically had the community calling for his intervention, and apparently he was a meeting, but what really has come out of it, I am not entirely sure, because we do need to understand, the minister does not have operational control over the police, and of course, he does not have the authority to dictate terms to the citizens. So how useful could he be in the immediate term? In the long run, legislatures and ministers will always have some degree of influence, right? Because in the long run, you put things in place, you see how they can affect the situation, but those tools can't work now. So, in fact, because the reason why I say that is one of the articles has an account or an opinion from a resident there, right? That has a different narrative. Right? Somebody said his understandings were there was a little misunderstanding with some youth men, so there was a little fight, a little fisticuffs. That made the front page, see lots in war. It was a little thing with children. We ain't used no gun. Just fellas had a little fisticuff, so we have to be extra careful because they ran with it, the media. That's what he's implying. Until I can't take it anymore, I had to come to and deal with it. So we have some statements reportedly from residents in the community saying things are bad, and other statements saying, can I tell the country that it was blown out of proportion? The group of men responded with a yes. What's interesting is that the previous statements that I was speaking about before, that was from the women in the community. So now we have to ask ourselves, where is the disconnect? What does it mean? We don't necessarily know. We could make assumptions and speculations based on the reports. I'm not necessarily one who wants to be quick to jump to conclusions over the intentions of individuals, because you never really know until it is mostly plainly obvious what an individual's intentions are, much less a group/subgroup, because that's what it is. One subgroup of the C-Lots community saying things were overblown, and the other one is saying, no, it was not. I will put forward one question. Perhaps the ones saying things were overblown, they don't want to hear nothing about authorities and C-Lots. They like it so. Not all of them might have that opinion due to criminal motivations. It could go back to what I said earlier. If you don't trust the police, you're not going to trust the police to settle your issues. You're not going to trust the police to be that fair, unbiased authority to settle things down, to help deal with the tension and de-escalate the situation. You're actually, at least some of them may be concerned of the situation escalating. Now, to what extent is that fair? One of the things that we have to always remember is when we want people to judge us, we want them to judge us with all of the, to try to understand the subtleties, the individualistic details of each person, of each person's decisions, of each person's motivations, the complexity of their lives, and what that could do to a situation, and have some understanding that it's not so simple, because we are all complex beings. But then when it's time for us to judge others, like how some members of the public might judge the police, or how some police officers might judge members of the public, when it's time to judge others, we want understanding for all the complexities of our lives, but we want to boil others down to an oversimplified version to themselves. Oh, well, you're from C-Lots, you have to be bad. Oh, well, you're the police, you have to be bad. The truth is, our communities come from us. Yeah, not everybody lives in C-Lots, but you know what? It's a community of Trinidad and Tobago. It comes from Trinidad and Tobago. Whatever it is and will be is due to, in no small part, the rest of the country, not just the people there. Meanwhile, police officers come from the country. We don't have a police force of foreigners that speak Spanish or French or Russian or Chinese or Korean or Japanese or the Queen's English. No. Most police officers, they speak just as slang-filled Trini dialect as the population. Like I said, I believe C-Lots is potentially a microcosm of the rest of the country. And to some extent, it's not like C-Lots is going to be the fulcrum by which fate will swing, or the pendulum will swing one way or the other. But it will be potentially a good example, a good indicator of how things are going overall. Because to some extent, if we want to deal with our crime problem, we also need, whether directly or indirectly, to deal with the various issues of the hotspots in particular, because that's where you're going to have more issues that you could tangibly deal with directly. So we have to wait and see what, if anything, will come of it. Let's go on to one more story before we take the next break, because I just wanted to point out again, things slip through the cracks. Of course, like I said, it was fine when it was gangsters killing gangsters, but then all of a sudden it became gangsters killing gangsters plus all kind of peoples are wrong. or gangsters going after prison officers, or then now other people started to get in on the murder game and the use of violence to deal with the issues of their everyday life. And what we've seen, thankfully it hasn't reached to the point of using guns, but what we've seen is teenage school children, secondary school students. I don't know, I'm not accustomed to seeing stabbings as a thing. Are we going to now kind of try to normalize this somehow? Because here's the situation. It was at a bazaar. The student was not from the school that held the bazaar. From what I understand, he's from another school. He snuck a small penknife into the event, threw metal detectors in the tongue of his shoes, so I assume it's like by the soles, and pulled it out during an altercation with 3 male students from his school inside the bazaar's dance. The cameras apparently picked him up, and the police did respond immediately. But some people might say, what do you mean they respond immediately? There's those three teens apparently all 3 of them were stabbed. I want to just get the 17-year-old and a 16-year-old, 2 of them were stabbed. They have injuries to their hands. The 16-year-old received stitches. The 17-year-old may require surgery, but it's reported injuries to their hands. The reason why it was allowed to happen, even though the police responded immediately, was because the police probably were not physically right next to the situation as it happened. But they did see the boy pull the knife out from his shoe on cameras and attempted to get there. So, given the state of things, it could have gotten worse. So thankfully, the intervention saved life, which is more or less what it's there for at the basic level, the core function, right? Preventing injuries, that's a little bit harder. My whole thing is, wait. This is my inner monologue, right? The wait. So he knew how to bypass the metal detectors with his penknife. Then he was willing to commit to the attack because he injured at least 2 of the other students. Anybody kind of, again, some concerns here? Like, we're not talking about, oh, he broke a glass bottle, or he took a piece of a broken metal chair. No. Or we're not even saying that the security arrangements for the bazaar was bad. It seems as though they had reasonable security arrangements, metal detectors, police cameras. But it's a level of sophistication you don't expect a student to have a knife in his shoe. First of all, that's not the best spot to have a weapon if you want self-defense, because if he got jumped, there's a very good chance that he would never be able to reach for the knife, and if he did while being jumped, they would realize what he was doing, take the knife from him, and continue the attack with the knife. Did he have it for self-defense, or did he have it because he knew he might get into a fight and he would want to escalate the situation? It's hard to ascribe intent on people we don't know. The result does not necessarily say what the intent is, but the sophistication of the preparation for the potential of violence, that's what concerns me. What do we have to do to safeguard our schools now? Because the issue is not, oh, we need more security measures to deal with this. No, the issue is, the crack is not security measures. If you have to use security measures, that's a patch. And it's an arms race. Your measures versus the measures to defeat or to circumvent or bypass. No, the real crack is, how did it get to this point in the first place, where a secondary school student is basically planning, and I'll put it in my shoe, and it'll avoid the metal detectors? How does he even know that? I didn't know that. I've never looked for it, but I don't think I've ever heard of that. Yeah, the fact that a student had to get to that point of sophistication and willingness to use violence at that level that it was allowed to get there. That's the problem. That's the crack. That's where you have to head it off, because no amount of security measures is going to guarantee safety and minimize violence. Let's take a break. We'll welcome the SP. Stay tuned.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need, we can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of have to stalemate.
They'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man who's being the victim.
we exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
I'm back here on Talking Point on WSND Content Capital. Sean Michael Small, did not introduce myself till now, joined by acting ASP Christopher Arun. There we go. You see, I got it right this time. It's been a while. It's been 2 weeks because we took a break from Carnival and a lot of stuff happened. But I guess we could start with where I just left off because apparently, folks, my commentary apparently exposed how naive I was with regards to how things actually go down in this country. It's a lot worse than I thought. Maybe I'm too sheltered and I live too much of a safe life in my quiet, everyday, normal, little house in my little neighborhood where not much of this stuff goes on. Because apparently I thought the security measures were adequate enough, but apparently ASP Arun, with regards to this incident, they may not have been, and you're saying that because you've seen situations where you directly involved in security screening would have gone further, would have potentially caught this situation.
Correct, yeah. So when you do security, good day to everybody. When you do security, or at least when you're doing searches at points of entries, you need to check everything. So when I used to work with the police, being task force, we used to work at particular venues and events as an extra duty, and we would conduct the searches or supervise the security that do the searches when you enter in a fete or event, and we would make you take off your shoes when you're coming into the compound or the event, and that is one of the main things. I remember
this is a known thing to bypass metal detectors.
Yeah, because like for instance with gangs and organized crime and whatnot, you have to bypass security, they would tend to give the females the weapons to hide, and therefore try to get it into the compound.
Where would the women hide it? Because
they would hide it in their shoes and whatnot.
If it's sneakers, and obviously if it's like some kind of high heel, open toe, barely anything there, you can't hide nothing in that. But it'd be sneakers or
yeah. Like I remember one time we searched some people coming in. A guy had on a long sleeve turtleneck, and he had an ice pick in his hand, in the sleeve of his hand, hidden.
Now, when you say an ice pick, obviously we're not talking some bulky handle.
No.
It was flattened down. So I assume when you looked at his sleeve, you didn't see a bulge.
Well, we didn't take any chance. So
so you had him rolled up.
Yeah, we searched everything. So because you can bypass the metal detectors even though you're searched, because the beeps don't necessarily pick up everything.
Now, I have heard, and I believe this to be at least partially true, that at least in the case of some secondary school students, as a day-to-day measure, they might carry a blade to defend themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I say, the reason why I think this is at least partially true is, there was a student in my year, I won't say who it is, some of my fellow classmates might know who it is, but we won't name names. At least one time I think I saw him with a knife. He never used it.
Right.
He never, I wouldn't necessarily say that he was a non-violent person, but I think he was a person who was very much ready to defend himself, right? And he also never committed an outward act of aggression that would make you be like, oh, he's a problem. In the sense of, it's a ticking time bomb or anything like that. Right. It was more of the case of, oh, he's willing to meet your nonsense with aggression if necessary. So kind of like just be normal with him, leave him alone. This is for everybody else.
So it's a norm. It's a norm in now, especially with violence in schools. You see.
Yeah, because I was speaking like over 20 years ago.
Right, and you see that now still happening, and you see security measures are put in place now where they search the students coming into the schools. It's certain hotspot schools as well.
But I want to ask, to what extent, now granted, again, and I mentioned this before, in your position when you were doing those roles and functions, you can't assume the intention is that. You can't make that assumption. You have to say, oh, we find your weapon, we have to take it from you because we can't just let you have it.
But well, in some cases you'll be arrested depending on on the intention. So
is it that though they feel the need to defend themselves because they're like
the
other
guy,
people have it, so we need to have it?
Correct. So the guy with the ice pick said he had it for his own defense.
Now, because there's a part of me, I guess I assume it's going to be a risk, right? You're kind of gambling when you're trying to bypass security with a weapon such as this. Like, do they have that consideration, or is it that they're so brazen they think that, you know, they'll get through?
Well, it's both. Both they are brazen, and some of them don't think that they will get caught.
Now, to some extent, I could kind of more understand the adults going into a fit, right? Because that's an adult environment with definitely with alcohol. And if somebody slips, you just need somebody that don't like you to slip something in, and then all of a sudden you have a problem. But this was a school bazaar dance, and you
wouldn't expect.
Unless I'm mistaken, alcohol is not flowing there.
Shouldn't be.
And you shouldn't have, like, the odds of weapons being in that environment should be reduced, right? Now, again, it's one thing for a student to have a defensive mentality and being armed. I'm not condoning it or agreeing with it, but it happens, right? When they're traveling day to day, because we don't know where they travel, what they have to interact with.
Well,
but with a dance,
and first of all, we don't know his intention.
What it was, yeah,
because we don't know why he went in or he or she went in. I don't know the details with the weapon into the school.
I mean, my only thing is, it's a hell of a thing if I'm going to defend myself, I have to reach for a knife in my shoe.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like the best plan.
No.
But
I think the idea was to get it into the compound.
Yeah. And then what? Oh, maybe then he put it in a pocket or whatever.
Probably.
But then now to go back out, he has to hide it again or...
Yeah. Maybe. Nobody searches the only way out.
I guess.
So, yeah.
I guess. He was arrested, I assume, right? What sort of penalties would a school child face in a situation like this? It's not...
Well, I mean, we have to be careful we speak about the matter in itself, because it would be faced in a court. But children who come before the court and who offend in any offense, in any matter, are treated almost differently than adults.
Yeah.
Because they are children.
Even when it's a violent act. So it's one thing if he was caught with a knife.
Right.
But it's another thing. Now, these boys were injured. I don't think it was life-threatening. It reached that point. Intervention happened before.
Correct.
But we've seen other cases where, you know,
so children are treated totally different. There is something called the Children's Judges Rules that dictates how police officers treat children who come into conflict with the law. So we use different terms for them. So you have a child that comes into conflict with the law. They are called chins. They are taken to a booking center, what we call a booking center. So there are booking centers set up, children's booking centers set up throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
At the booking centers, they come in with their parents, the investigators.
These are specific areas so that they're not in the general who gets arrested and all of that, right?
Correct. And they are treated well. They are given the rights of an attorney. If they can't afford an attorney in any matter, an attorney will be given to them, will be afforded to them. So legally, it would send an attorney. So if the police officer doing the investigation decides, well, they want to take them into custody because it's an arrestable offense and they need to take them into custody, which is the last resort, we have special suites at these booking centers for them to stay at. And
okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not
the parents won't be allowed to stay with them,
no,
I would
of
imagine.
course not. No.
Okay.
Nobody's allowed to stay with them. And they have special rooms that they would be interviewed in, which is recorded. And in these rooms, the attorney, children's authority may be there. If they need welfare, they need assistance, it's given to them. And they're treated totally different. When they appear before the children's court also, it's demilitarized, it's casual, it's a casual setting. There are nobody in robes, there's no judges in robes, there are no attorneys in robes. They basically have on plain clothes.
There's still security though?
There are police officers and security. The police officers are dressed down in a particular, I think there's a light blue shirt and whatnot.
Is it because the crimes, the levels will vary so much, not, you know, lesser offenses that especially if they're not violent or you know, you don't necessarily want to.
No, they are all treated the same way.
No, but like you're kind of trying to prevent the child from kind of getting hit too hard psychologically.
Well, yes,
is that it?
they are treated as children. So,
Right.
you know, children think differently, they operate differently, and they may offend differently based on their stage of mental.
Because much younger, it doesn't have, it's not just limited to 16, 17, it could be much younger.
Yeah, it could be much younger.
Right.
The age of criminal liability, I think, is 10 in criminal offenses, and for sexual offenses, it's 12. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I think people need to not make the mistake, because you're saying, look, these are all the things that we do differently to kind of make it more palatable for minors to not affect them unnecessarily.
Sure.
Because yes, even if you are the perpetrator of an offense, if the psychological effect of the remedy is I guess, how should I put it? It could have unintended or unnecessary consequences.
Yeah.
But people should not make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, they treat kids soft. So especially if you have a kid offender, right? Because to some extent, this is a trope even in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we can't hit the kid or whatever. It's like, no, if a child, particularly, you know, an older child, 16, 17, they get way too aggressive, way too violent, doesn't mean that you're just going to let them be violent. You're going to do what is necessary to stop them, you know, proportional to the level of risk to yourself, the rest of the public, or even to themselves.
Yeah.
And if it's the rest of the public and to other officers is high enough,
so
it could be met with violence.
in place for that,
Right. So if they are violent, they could be met with violence. There's no.
It's reasonable force. Force is met with reasonable force.
Now, I don't know to what extent you could speak about this because, well, you switch gears into a new role, but just based on your experience, though, there's also, I guess one of my concerns coming out of this is, you know, we're starting to see more news about students utilizing violence, utilizing knives in particular, I guess as a weapon that they could get their hands on.
Sure.
But then also there's concerns about suicides. I think there were a couple for the year for child suicides.
Yeah, there was,
Now, on one hand, you could say maybe overall, this might be a bad sign of our kids in a bad space when they either feel to lash out or to take their own life.
Yeah.
And on that second part there, like, do you have, I think to some extent, maybe there are a lot of areas that we're failing at, and have you been seeing these situations where?
Well, first of all, the problem with society now is that our children are a reflection of how we behave. Okay. So unfortunately, because we have this ghetto, and using the word ghetto, this gangster mentality.
Yeah, that might be,
Yeah, that's the better word. Gangster mentality. You get into an accident, you come out in a particular behavior and method to oppose the other party without even trying to reason out the situation first.
Yeah.
Somebody cuts you off in a line, somebody cuts you off in traffic, somebody speaks to you a particular way. There's no reasoning. So you see, the adults are behaving a particular way, and the children pick up on this behavior, and it becomes the norm, especially where they meet. So they congregate in schools.
They do it to other children. Yeah.
And they do it to other children. So what we see in here is just a reflection of society in the children that are coming up. So what we need to do is change our behavior so that we can have children also change their behavior.
No, but okay, that speaks, you could easily see how that speaks to the violence and aggression.
Right.
But with regards to students thinking, you know, oh, my life is over, so I should take my own life.
Oh, you mean in terms of suicide?
Well, suicide as well, yeah. Like, because I actually think you're onto something there. Like, there might be something with regards to how society is. The examples we're giving them might not be enough to deal with these situations.
And then they take their lives for reasons that are within their own control, or their parents' control, or the adults in their supervision control, in the sense
that's a hell of a way
how,
to put it.
it's how they are treated. So children may not, as I said, they don't operate as mature-minded as adults. So a child is basically to the age of 25. Studies have shown that up to the age of 25, you're still junior in your mentality and how you think. Your brain isn't fully developed by the age of 25, until the age of 25. So your thinking is totally different. And then, so children, sometimes what they see as the end of it, they get treated a particular way, they're punished a particular way. They believe their lives are over at the end of the day because this situation occurred. And nobody's there to reason with them or teach them how to overcome that.
I mean, is some of it just a simple poor use of language? Because the easiest example is, you know, you're on the street, you get into an aggressive altercation, you say, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. And then if there's a police officer like 10 feet away that all of a sudden comes walking up, all of a sudden, man, boy, long real fast, I didn't actually mean I would kill him, officer. Right? But like, of course, parents now, they might say things like that. You bring a boy over, I will kill you. You're failing your tests, I will do this. You know, I will do that. And like, it's almost like if we don't know how to reasonably.
Yeah, and then children make mistakes. So you might have a teen that comes home pregnant, and the first thing you want to do is kill them. Without, you try to reason. The thing is, we as adults fail to understand that we don't make their minds. We always say that. You always say that instead, we don't make their minds. Children will make mistakes. It happened in the past. It just happens a lot more now because there are a lot more children now.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So a long time you might have one or two incidents of a teen getting pregnant. Now you're getting more of that because there are more children now. So there are a lot more children getting involved sexually and intimately with other children, hopefully not adults. And they come home.
I hate to say this, but there's more of that now too for the same reason. There's just more.
And I don't blame the children.
Yeah.
I blame the adults.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones encouraging the child in that behavior. And then the way they are treated, there's no reason with it. There's no reason to show them, well, look, you've reached this far, you made a mistake. This is how we overcome the mistake.
Is it that we're just unprepared? Because I think
I think we are unprepared as
parents. When it was one or two situations, right?
Yeah.
This is very relatively speaking, you know, for the sake of the discussion. I'm not that statistically accurate. You know, it was, first of all, like one or two situations.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something you're accustomed to because it doesn't come up frequently, and it's easier to kind of deal with it then.
Well,
but when it's more widespread
it's more widespread, and nobody prepares you how to be a parent. Nobody prepares you and teaches you how to be a parent. We would have been taught, or people would have been taught by other parents or their own parents, this is how you behave, this is how you grow up, this is how you treat this. You go to school, you get a job, you have a family and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we have gone away from that norm into just behaving how we want and treating others how we want.
And this is a situation where inevitably when it goes too far, the police will get involved. But this is one of those things where, you all will get involved at the end.
Yeah.
But there isn't that much you could do at the beginning. The ball is in the court of everybody else but you. You can't police parenting.
No. But we advise parents through NGOs. We get assistance from NGOs to help parents understand how to parent better, how to treat with the situation. I remember there was a report we were investigating in Special Victims where the child came home pregnant and the father he couldn't handle it. He really couldn't handle it. He didn't know how to handle it. We had to put him sit down and explain, this is how a girl child might think. This is how she might want to go forward in life. She has seen somebody. It was a lawful relationship, and he couldn't understand, for any reason he couldn't understand why she was leaving his home with everything.
Right.
To venture into a relationship with somebody who had nothing.
When you say girl child, she was 16, 17?
Yeah, she was young, yeah.
And what the father of the child was also, because it was, when you say a lawful relationship, between her and the father of the child, or no?
Yeah, they were within a what we call a Romeo clause. So they were within the age
he
bracket.
wasn't like 39.
Yeah,
he was within her, right.
He was in the age bracket.
And I guess...
And her own father couldn't understand her behavior because she left this well-built home, this relationship. They did nothing wrong. When we got into the investigation, they did nothing wrong as parents.
Right.
So you have a fit mother, you have a fit father. Her mother wanted to kill her because she knew what they went through as a family to reach this stage.
Right.
And then she left the home and went with somebody that wasn't, in their eyes, fit, but nonetheless, he wasn't of well means.
Yeah.
And they couldn't understand what they did wrong.
Basically, the parents know, you can't afford this child.
Correct.
Right? Or rather, to afford the child, you're going to have a hard life. And this is where I will comment on it, and it might be a lot of hindsight, and it might be a lot of speculation. But this is where I think parents need to understand. You can't like tell your children, do as I say, not as I do. Don't explain things and then expect them to understand the reasoning. Because I do wonder if, okay, they got to a point, so their children don't have to go through it, but the daughter essentially opts to go through hardship anyway.
Correct.
Did the daughter fully understand the parents' point of view?
Yeah, I think the daughter, in this case the girl child, she had love in her eyes. She couldn't see well enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted to be in a relationship
And
with
everybody
the guy.
knows what those first,
But the
teenage
parents,
loves
and
are.
the thing was, the parents were well off, and they were fit parents. For the best part, they were mature and good parents, and they just couldn't understand how to deal with the situation.
I'm not actually knocking the parents.
No, and we had to provide counseling through victim and witness support unit for the parents.
For the parent, yeah.
So that they could understand that they did nothing wrong, and this was just her making her choices.
Right. I'll say this. I could see a world where it's not that they didn't do anything wrong. It's just that you literally can't anticipate all the things that, because there's no book on how to parent, right?
No.
Every child might need subtle differences. You can't anticipate all the things that you need to tell them, right? And I don't know what they may or may not have, what lessons they may or may not have taught.
And what works for one parent might work for another parent.
Because I have read and heard and seen situations where, the child is like a perfect child.
Right.
So the parents continue because it's working out so far. The problem is, it's almost like a sports team that's winning all the time. You don't necessarily know what the problems are because the success of the child and so far the behavior is good or whatever, but then when you introduce a new variable that you've never had to deal with before. And again, maybe this is one of the issues with children that might be too perfect. The parents might be so successful, it's like, everything is going great, but then when you have this new variable, because they never had adversity all of a sudden, now the parent's response, it's like, as much as you said the mother said that she was a killer, like as extreme as that is, it's even more extreme because she might not have never even experienced disapproval in any significant way before.
Sean, to be honest, the child seemed to be well brought up.
Right, but that's my point. Like she probably hasn't made any major mistakes.
No, she didn't.
She hasn't had to face any major consequences.
Up to that point in her
so
life.
she's thinking everything is fine because everything always is fine.
Right. Okay.
That's one of those, you know what I mean? So that's why I said it's not to blame the parents, but it's like, how could you have figured out the subtle ways to give her that lesson in advance when you yourself don't even know that you might have to give it?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's not even to say that the child has any sort of deficiencies. It's just one of those quirks in life where you can't anticipate how things will work out with regards to the experience.
Right. So what we see, as we said, what we see, and we did see in the special victims, because I'm no longer there. In the special victims department, you would see reports like this. And again, the point is that children think totally differently than adults. And their minds mature. They're not mature as well as adults. And they make decisions that we will not understand.
Yeah, they just don't have the same level of experience.
Right, and so taking a knife and putting it in your shoe, or putting it in your waist, or putting it, or hiding it to go into a fete or into an event.
But also, because we always
might
hear
make sense to them.
Yeah, we always hear the accounts that, because it's funny, like older people at times might value their life more.
Right.
Right? Young people tend to be, especially
irrational.
When a war is fresh, they're like, we're going to go to war and fight the good fight. And all of a sudden at the end, it's like, you're kind of looking around and it's like.
Again, we don't know the circumstances around this individual having this weapon.
Right, but.
Could it have been gang related? Could it have been a motive? Could the motive have been retaliation? Could it have been self-defense? So we really don't know the details behind the.
So I guess.
The possession of the weapon.
Young people could be gung-ho, especially young men. Of course, the parents now, they might not fully understand what's going on because case in point, that example, that's not the narrative that you will see on TV, right?
No.
TV problems always have some sort of clear clue.
Yeah, and there's some end.
Yeah. Whereas,
result in learning something from the situation.
Right, but this is not, life is more complex, right?
Yeah, and it could also be drugs could be an issue. The person could be on drugs, for all we know.
Yeah, even good children could end up.
I have seen children brought up in a proper home.
Yeah.
And drugs messed up their lives.
So where I was going was, with regards to both students and parents, do they really listen to the warnings that you'll give them, or to the counseling, or to the advice?
Yeah, for the most part, yes, especially with victim and witness support unit. But you tend to see changes as you age and you get older. So where a child grows into adulthood, so what you tend to see is misbehavior at a certain age bracket. Sometimes you see it from the primary school into the secondary school level. Then they kind of even off, they kind of settle down. And then later on in the secondary school period, they get more aggressive.
Yeah.
And then they kind of cool it. And then later on in life, 18, 19, 20, this is where they become more volatile and more aggressive again. And then as they grow older, they seem to level off again.
Right, but
so
like,
you see different patterns sometimes.
When you say older, you're thinking like 25 and older.
No,
21, they might still be 19, 20, 21, they might still be whatever they were, especially if they learn the wrong lessons.
And then some children may give you trouble at an earlier age than others. And as they get older, they realize,
Well, that's what I was saying with the young girl. Like, the children who are young that give you trouble, they're facing consequences, they're facing adversity, they have to learn harsh lessons. And some of them end up, if the guardians don't know what to do, they continue. But some of them, they calm down and figure out because they got those lessons early.
Yeah.
Now, you did say that young people, like, a lot of it is they're following the behavior of adults.
Yeah.
Or in the case of suicide, they're following they're being affected by the statements of adults.
Yeah.
Right? And it's causing these extreme behaviors.
It could be, and no, that's just one case. It could also be that they're in relationships that they think.
Well, yeah, right. But where I was going with that was, with regards to the recent stabbing, like, at some point, you can't have security measures to cover everything.
No, you wouldn't. You would never have enough security measures.
So, am I right to say that, look, we really do need to fix those issues where, society's aggression needs to calm down if you want to see the kids' aggression to calm down?
What we notice in Trinidad is aggressive behavior breeds aggression. So as adults, so as a child, you are beaten. We notice that you are beaten aggressively. You become aggressive. As a child, you become aggressive. You go into adulthood aggressive.
It's my turn.
Yeah. So you carry on the behavior. So don't have that soft drink, or else I'll beat you. You take up the soft drink and you're beaten badly because you touched a soft drink, maybe in a grocery or home or whatever. And then as you get older now, you pass on the treatment to your children. I said don't take the soft drink, and you beat them aggressively for a soft drink.
I hate to say this, but my last question, and then we'll go to the first. Do we have an active caller right now? Sorry. Okay, we do have a caller right now. Yeah. But so we'll go to the call. Digger Martin is on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean, and the senior officer for the TTPS. Excellent topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I will come back directly to the TTPS. And I'm going to ask the officer a direct question. Do the TTPS scan the environment to see what is happening? Because I had the privilege to go back through that judgment against the government with respect to the Auditor General. And there's a snippet where the judge, the lady judge, was dialoguing with the government senior counselor. And she asked, and she said, is there an investigation into the behavior of the finance minister? And this is what she put directly to him. She said there's an affidavit from the AG, the Auditor General, that says the finance minister was bullying her, and you know what's the other piece? coercing her to sign off on the national accounts. Putting it in another way, was that a conspiracy to commit a fraud on the national accounts? And that is why I'm asking you if the police service scan the environment, because they say when you see something, say something. When you hear something, say something. And here you have the highest court giving you evidence to possibly investigate a high office holder for misbehaving. That is my lawyer had to put in on here, misbehaving in public office. Further to that, there is another piece where the expenditure of $1 billion is missing, and that is missing from the documentation of 21 ministries. The accounting officer in 21 ministries is the accounting officer, the permanent secretary. Further to that, $600 million off of that $1 billion come from the finance ministry. So I'm saying if you get in information like that, the best thing for the police, the executive, because there's a big question about their ability and how they reach at the top from the CPSA judgment. So is the police, and you might know if you could find out and let the public know that you're taking the evidence of the Privy Council, you take real judgment, and you're going to see what they say. If it is truthful, I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. Although I will slightly push back. I don't know if what the Privy Council said is enough to trigger criminal investigation. We could infer things. I just don't know if it's enough.
Well, I don't think they can direct the police to conduct an investigation.
Well, and yes, the Privy Council can't.
Yeah, but they can. Although they make statements that yes, the police can look at, but that's why we have the FIB and the FIU.
Mm-hmm.
These are both civil and police bodies that monitor transactions like this. We have policies in place at ministries where if, in the case of an Auditor General, detects an offense,
right,
they make a report to the police.
And I think that's one of the issues with the whole Auditor General situation. The Auditor General, at least as far as I'm aware, did not make a report to the police. So
even though
that's one of the people who would have made the reports and these kind of things.
Yeah, so it may or may not be in their best interest to make a report to the police, but nonetheless, there are policies in place that if they do to detect an offense, whether it's criminal or not.
Well, that's my point. To what extent does she think there's an offense and not reporting it, or does she think it's not really an offense, or at least not an offense yet?
But for this to have reached the Privy Council, she would have engaged an attorney, and the attorney would have advised
but it was
her.
civil.
Right. But nonetheless, the attorney would have advised her.
In fact, the Privy Council case wasn't even directly on the matter. It was to allow her to then take up, I can't remember which aspect of the situation, with judicial review.
Right.
So, like, it in a strange way, it was preliminary to anything actually happening.
Right, and her attorney in the civil matter would have directed her to make a report to the police if there was an offense.
If there was. Okay, right, fair enough. So we have Shagonas on the line. Good morning, caller, you on here?
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I see we going back with this East South Key business and the gang wars. And the problem with that, I have explained to you what the history of that before. Because those areas in East Dry River was very nice areas. When I first went there in the late 50s, 60s, there was better than if I lived in Chogwanas. But what happened, as I said, for reasons that I won't go through again because I don't think we have the time, the whole area started to disintegrate because the better off people moved out and the people who came in was at the bottom level. And they were still under the British, well before we become a republic. And when they came and checked it, they pointed out that this is a serious problem. And the reason is the environment. If people grow up in this environment, you're going to get this. And that is when they come up with a slum clearance program. And all the slums were acquired. Everybody who put in their claims were paid. And the government was leaving the buildings there. And we told them, no, you got to knock them down. And they didn't. And that is the cause of it up to now. And nobody is saying that. Nobody is addressing that problem. Make it worse, not have me spread to other parts of Trinidad. Any questions or comments or queries?
No, caller. I believe I agree with you when you brought it up before, and I'll agree with you again.
Why don't you all see it?
Thank you, caller. Thank you. Yeah, because I said I do think what's going on in C-Lots is a bit of a microcosm, particularly with regards to the relations with the police and the community. Because it seems as though the women were like, "We need police," and the men are like, "Oh no, you're all going. This was not serious. Calm down."
Yeah.
And I do wonder if maybe there's some of the men in the community is like, "No, but we don't want the police, either because we don't want them to look into what we're doing, or we don't trust the police." This I think goes back to, I can't remember what it was that you were saying earlier, but the whole interaction, like aggression begets aggression.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, okay, yes, there might be police officers that do the wrong thing, but citizens also need to understand, if you're aggressive, even if it's in response, police is police. Like, it doesn't have to be fair, because to some extent, you have authority. The interaction is not necessarily meant to be fair in all ways, right? Like you need to comply.
Yeah, So when police meet aggression, you will sometimes or tend to have aggression as well. So you have officers. So there are officers designated to perform duties in C-Lots and BTM from Hearts and Minds and other areas of the TTPS that get a lot of cooperation from the residents. So the community policing efforts and the community policing officers go into these areas, and they have a lot of cooperation, and they have very good relationships with the residents in these areas. And then when other officers come in, they tend to
execute warrants and the like.
To execute warrants, they tend to meet opposition. And sometimes the opposition is warranted, most times it's not. But so therefore the clashes occur, and then the police take a resistant part to deal with the situation. So you have this confrontation. You always have confrontation. As a task force officer working in these communities, we always had confrontation. I remember searching homes, and bottles would be pelted and fly, and you have to duck for cover and whatnot. But these are a minority. In this community. It's not to say that the entire community comes out and behaves a particular way to the police. So the community members must be commended also, some of them, or most of them, for how they behave and treat with the police. And they try to teach the police, listen, when you come into the community, you don't have to treat all of us like this. And we end up developing strategies in the academy on how to treat people better, even in these communities, because we've seen how that unfolded.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I hope.
But you would always get that confrontation, because you would have eruptions. And so if you have different people in the community behave in a particular way, so you have people for the police, and you have people against the police for whatever reasons, and the police comes into the situation now, sometimes they deal with it.
And then, of course, now, on some level, it's a reasonable expectation, right? Especially given what you just said. Some are for, some are against. It's not unreasonable to say the ones that are against, well, at the very least, if you were involved in criminal activity, we know you potentially would be against. So then it's not hard. It might not always be right to say, oh, why are you pushing back so hard? And to some extent, that might be part of the origin of the police's response. You're looking suspicious to us, so we're going to treat you even more differently than everybody else.
Sometimes that's the case, And going back to the earlier conversation with the children, one of the main things as parents you need to do is instill your traits your behaviors and the correct ways on how to behave in society from a very early age. We're talking about, you know, they say you can't wait till the tree gets too old to bend it,
Yeah.
to straighten it.
Well, I get the idea, yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, you need to implement your parenting skills at a very early age. We're talking about preschool.
But I dare I ask, some of the people who maybe have the wrong mindset when interacting with police, they might pass that on down to their kids?
Yeah, we see that. You see that in some of these communities, hotspot areas sometimes, where how they treat police is based on how they were treated, and they pass this on to children. And, you know, they have children running away from the police. I saw it as an officer working on the field. Look, the police, they run.
Right,
and then,
yeah.
you know, some of them would pretend they're playing gun shooter with the police.
Oh, God.
You understand? So, as police officers, you have to be very responsible on how you behave and how you treat with others.
But that's the thing, like, this is, because I think people don't necessarily fully appreciate how difficult it is. If people are being aggressive to you, whether in response or just off the bat, part of the thing that's also in the back of your mind is, how far will they escalate, regardless of what I do, whether to try to de-escalate or not, or especially if I'm trying to de-escalate and they are continuing, you know, blowing up, right? Yeah. How far will they go? Because you've seen people commit violent acts against the police here and around the world, right? Yeah. But then also with the kids now, when it's like, or even with young men, it's like, oh, the police run. Like, we get it. Not all of them are running because they might have a gun or drugs on them. No. They might be innocent of anything. But right. Yeah. But to the police now, like, that's still technically, at least in the past, and it reasonably so, that's suspicious, right?
Correct, yeah.
What you're running for. So now here's the real trick. To some extent, if the police are like, oh, well, it's just kids that them run, eventually criminals will pick up on it and know, well, if the kids just run, they'll just let them go.
Yeah.
And you know, it's one of those cat and mouse games of I figure out what your response is and I take advantage of it and vice versa. Yeah. So it's not like you could just say, fine, it's just kids, let them run, or it's just 19, 20-year-olds, let them run. Like, to some extent, you can't just do that.
Right.
So
it's difficult.
Now, with that said, I will just say this, Professor. I suspect, I could be wrong, but give it enough time and certain areas east of the Savannah and in East Port of Spain might end up being gentrified. I don't know about sea lots, but it's just there's only so much room around Port of Spain, right? But then again, you know, if Port of Spain itself could never catch its collective breath and bring back its economic glory, and I don't mean it has to become some like playground for the rich and wealthy, but just to be a thriving city.
Well, one thing we wanted to, as you have the topic of the city and Port of Spain, one thing we wanted to talk about today from the media ambassador's point of view is to commend. We wanted to commend both the members of the public and the police officers. Firstly, we had a very nice carnival. Mm-hmm. Excellent. It was basically crime free.
Wow.
Basically, there was
Listen. Let your superiors try them semantics. You know? No, I don't think a lot of people will accept that it was crime free.
Okay,
but crime did not affect Carnival. I'll give you that.
Not as much as in previous years. Yeah. I want to say that this was one of the exceptional carnivals. It was very...
Revelers were safe.
It was very safe.
People generally were safe.
Yeah.
Carnival activities themselves were safe.
Yeah.
Right?
It was one of the safest. I must say, it was one of the most, because I was out on the field and I was in Port of Spain. I did duties in Port of Spain as well. And the atmosphere was very calm.
Yeah.
There wasn't much violence. The officers took advantage of the SOE, where they would have specifically paid attention to gangs.
Right.
Because we had information that certain gangs would have been in certain areas. And we took advantage of that information. We took advantage of the SOE and we implemented stop and searches all over Port of Spain. Right? So we had a very effective strategy going forward. For the carnival period. And going forward, we just wanted to advise members of the public that this is not the time to put our guard down. You all did an excellent job. You cooperated with the police and the security forces. We want to ask you all to continue with the movement so that we could again, keep the safe period going?
Well, we have to wait and see. I will say this though, given the level of violence, yes, there's been murders and yes,
well, it was
been,
isolated. To me, it was isolated.
But my point is, you're not seeing as much automatic rifle usage.
Yeah.
So at least there is that benefit, I think, in the SOE. Now the question is it just suppression that will end when the SOE ends, or will the police will you be able to kind of keep the momentum going, have enough methods and means?
And should the SOE should they be implemented now, maybe curfews and whatnot? Yeah.
I didn't say it, he said it.
I'm just saying, at the end of it, it must be assessed to know if we continue or not. But the carnival was very safe. I must say people behaved themselves well. There was a few incidents of trucks rolling over people's feet and
oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, God, this is one of the reasons why after I heard the story and saw it, I'm like...
I also wanted to commend the police officers, because especially the ones who were on the field.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, they were very patriotic in how they conducted their duties. I don't know if members of the public know this, but overtime stops as of Carnival Friday. Yeah. So police officers don't go into the Carnival period getting overtime.
Yeah.
They get their basic pay. They work additional hours. They work lengthy hours.
Of course.
Right? They are faced with a number of duties that are Carnival related.
Yeah.
So the ones you see out, especially on Carnival Monday and Tuesday, are very patriotic to have been out there. They are compensated with something called like 4 days extra leave. But at the end of the day, they have officers, there are officers out there with hundreds of days, and Carnival and
4 more days don't matter.
4 more days don't matter, and leave is generally restricted.
Yes.
Around Carnival, Christmas, and for the SOE.
The areas where you want the leave, you can't get the leave.
You can't get the leave. So I really want to commend the officers, because especially the ones that worked, they should be commended. Hopefully they will be commended.
Here's the
properly.
key. Sometimes it's not what you see, but what you don't see. And
Yeah.
what I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, but what I didn't see was bad public interaction.
Yeah.
Which, like what you mentioned before, when you just have more chances of public interaction. I mentioned this.
Yeah.
And you implied this with regards to more issues in the families, right? Because there's just more.
Yeah.
More police and the public and alcohol
Yeah.
at the same time. The public with the alcohol, not the police. You have more chances of things going wrong, and we didn't really hear stories of things going wrong.
No.
So have to appreciate that.
Yeah, and the members of the public were very cooperative. They behaved very well. And again, it was an enjoyable carnival. I think there will be a lot more, we had a lot more foreigners, visitors to Trinidad than usual.
That augurs well.
Yeah.
Folks, so with that said, I will encourage, thank you, of course, ASP Arun for joining me, and thank you for the callers. Mr. San Fernando, I understand where you're coming from. I don't necessarily have a good answer for you, and ASP Arun won't necessarily have a good answer for you, because those things are in too many gray areas, and that's maybe one of the reasons why we need certain reforms of our legislation and all of that jazz, because there are certain questions. I don't even know if the police is the body or has the authority to investigate or conduct certain things with regards to certain regulations being broken in the manner of which they have. Like, I have no idea, right? So, but I'll leave that there. We don't want to go on too much longer. So just want to say, with what the ASP just said, for people to be safe, part of that is, and ever since one of the violent incidents over Carnival, I'll continue to warn you, I'll continue to give the message of, look, you don't know who you're interacting with, for better or worse. So maybe it's default position. It's nice to be nice, because try and be positive so that people will be positive to you, right? So that in part you could stay safe. And also, even if you know the person and they're harmless and you don't like them, it's still nice to be nice. Make today a good one, as Mr. Shah would always say. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And if we all stay safe, we could see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN. Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist.